I'm here with Jason Beck, here with Zettawatts. and Zettawatts has a really interesting approach to enabling all these energy transition technologies that must make it to market, helping them improve the financials. But before we get into that, I think we really want to talk about, this climate journey, because I've been seeing you in and around our energy transition ecosystem. I think we met at one of the Energy Underground events with Kevin Doffing. That's one of those secret gems here in Houston.
Yes, gotta go. Great luncheon.
And I think, you've really moved through your climate journey here in Houston. Tell us about why this is the time and place for you to do this.
Well, first, man, I stalked you on LinkedIn. Let's tell the audience what it really is. I stalked you on LinkedIn because I saw this guy who founded a movement in Boston with Greentown Labs and just was part of it for a long time. And it was like, I remember when I met you, it's like 4 months into when I said, I'm going to devote my time to this too. So the OGs, hell yeah, I'm going to try to stalk you, right? So once we met, right, it was just the start of this journey for me. I think why here, why now? Here in Houston's such an awesome ecosystem. Our founder, Scott Case, is in DC. That's where the company's based. We're globally distributed. We want people everywhere in the US. It's all about creating this movement, like you said, of trying to figure out how corporate America is going to really invest in projects and getting all these new technologies and projects, geothermal, right? Biogas, the waste to heat movement, so cool. You get all these technologies too in front of them, but you have to do it in a structure that the buyer is going to understand. We only, in this world of economics and prices and making money, in that world, the customer drives everything. It has to drive the demand. So you have to listen to the customer. And if you don't, I think that's where some of these companies could miss it and miss out. And somebody needs to be there to tell that story. And that's really what Zettawatts is all about. Really trying to find that middle ground and, like you said, invest in projects.
Yeah. And I think what's interesting, tell us a little bit about the AREC and where this comes from and about how you and your partner are going to change things.
Yeah. So first explain what a REC is. A REC is a concept that was around in 2008-ish. I'm sorry, I'm not a great historian, but the REC market was created to allow a renewable energy new resource to have two streams of income versus one stream of income if you were, let's say, up until recently, nuclear facility or natural gas-fired plant or coal. Sorry. Get rid of those fast, please. And that second revenue stream was the renewable energy certificate. For every 1 megawatt of power a renewable energy resource generates, it generates this renewable energy certificate. And there has been a market. That market has become liquid. There are brokers. There are customers. The process is broken. And what's happening now is critics, people who say you're not doing enough, please know if you're doing something, thank you, and do something. But the naysayers that say you're not doing enough, they're saying this is greenwashing, right? They're coming out and saying that this is the process. Let me explain the process real quick. These companies that are trying to say, I am green, I use green power, which is your scope 2 emissions. We can get to that too. It's how they green their energy usage, but they do it in the 3 months after the year is over. So that the greenwashing term makes sense. It's like, ooh, let me take all this power that I used.
And literally wash it with the RECs.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, the additionality part of it, and people say, well, what's additionality? How do you test for it, et cetera? We're making it really simple. Is the project at COD? Jason, I know you know the way that a project gets funded, and if the audience doesn't, let's explain it. But the process starts where a land lease happens. Once the land lease happens, you need a land lease and a financial model, and you can get into the interconnection queue in most of them.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to talk about how crazy
many
that
years
is,
does that take?
we can talk about it. Well, sometimes that process happens, right? And once it happens, now you have a project. But then the process to get the different funding resources and find your finance partners, so many of them don't even get done.
Mm-hmm.
And honestly, that's also why the interconnection queue is clogged too, because it's a lot of ideas. We need all of them. I'd argue the interconnection queue shouldn't get involved until somebody says this is financially real, meaning a bank or any financing vehicle. Now, the IRA is changing a lot of that, which is really cool. Can talk about how those are changing too. But how do you want to go from here? The scope 2 emissions, I think, is great.
Let's
part 2.
Let's continue down this path of talking about the RECs, because I think we had Neil Dykman on about a year ago today, and his kind of challenge is a REC is not the same as decarbonization, and a REC is specifically just for renewable energy, right? But there's kind of a maybe a misunderstanding or a misnomer in the market that that's not necessarily exactly the same as a decarbonized energy supply.
Okay, I'm ready for this one. Everybody on this, listening to this, and anybody that gets to listen to this in the future needs to go read the book Speed and Scale.
Okay.
It is a master plan on how we are going to decarbonize and get to a place by 2050 in totality. I didn't read this book until 7 months into my journey this year, even though the founder told me that the reason why he got started in 2022 was because of this book. But I was like, okay, cool, whatever. I'll help you solve your problem and we'll see where this goes. And then he said it to me. I asked him the question again, what got you started in this? And he told me again. And I'm like, all right, I got to read this book this weekend. It's a master plan. Here's what you're going to learn if you read the book. And go read the book because there's so much cool stuff in there. 16.5 of the gigatons of carbon that we need to remove, which is a grand total of 65 by 2050, comes from making the energy that we use renewable sources. Just let that sink in. 25% of the problem gets solved through what we are calling RECs. And the problem that Zettawatts is going to solve. I love Neil. He's a great part of it. But you need to read that book, because if I'm working on 25% of the problem, I feel really good. And thank you for everyone that's doing other carbon-related activities. The methane thing that I learned in the fact that I should eat less beef.
Yeah.
Because we need to reduce 50% of our beef. We need to eat less beef and pork and anything that produces methane. That's a very large portion of it too. That's what the carbon market's for. Okay. So there's 3 scopes, by the way. So
in many ways, the REC is the fastest path because it's a system that already exists, right? We already have a set of energy that we know decarbonizes. And that's why you're focused on additionality versus, say, a carbon credit.
Yes. And here's where Zettawatts goes in the long run. There are so many different attributes that renewable energy projects have that they don't even know about. Additionality is one of them. Have you heard of things like locationality?
No, I don't. Yeah.
So, or investing in, and let me stop for a second. So locationality is I want to invest in projects that are in my area. So you have groups like, did you see what came out in California recently where, okay, so in 2026, a couple of backdrop stories of why we even exist as Zettawatts too. In 2025, the SEC is going to require all publicly traded companies to report on their Scope 1, Scope 2, and Scope 3 emissions. Scope 3 is kind of like maybe not, but something's going to come out on Scope 3 and they'll have to do something. We'll get there too. When they do that, is there any publicly traded companies that aren't going to actually do something about it? No, they're going to want to do something about it. So they're trying to find the right pieces. So 2025 is a backdrop for SEC. I said the states, California, New York, and Boston have all come out with rules that are similar in nature, but then also force you to actually make carbon reduction. So SEC is just report. The local laws in New York, Birdo in Boston, California, I have no idea what the rule is called, but just came out, and it's for 2026. That's actually, if you don't reduce, we tax you. So it's now there's a penalty. So there's, they
so you have
talk
the
about
reporting, so you know what you're doing, and then you got the penalties that are coming from the state level. It says, oh, you're doing this, you got to pay up. Right. Those two pieces are really coming together, and it's not far away.
It's not, right? That's
2
right.
years, 3 years. Yeah,
exactly. And that's why, back to what your question was, that's why the rec and why the rec is so important, because it's the thing that's existed. And for those who don't know the different scopes, scope 1 is reduce your own carbon emissions, right? You're a methane producer, stop producing methane. Scope 2 is the energy that you use. So electricity from the grid. Quick electricity lesson. Electricity goes in. The mix happens. You have no idea unless you have solar panels on your roof and you're your own microgrid, which cool things too, keep microgrids going. But those little, right, just that little one unique solar battery, maybe a little backup gen. If you don't do that, you don't know what's coming through your wires. And so, but depending on the different states and their individual mix, some states are 60%, some states are 80%
renewable.
Correct. Or the opposite way.
Oh, okay.
80%, right. Hopefully that's when, yes. But like 5-10 years from now, right? But that's how it's going to change. And it's just going to be this gradual shift. So there has to be these people in making markets happen, right? Making customers understand what different products and services that they're really after, listening to them. And this is where locationality came in before. Another thing that they're really interested in is how can we make this more equitable, right? It's ESG, the social aspect of it. How do we invest in projects? How do we make our investment in AREX be something that is impactful to a local community?
And I guess the locality matters too, because I think one of the challenges with REX is you can literally be on, a grid where the power wasn't produced, right? In terms of a traditional REC, like you could buy a REC out of the California market, but be in the Texas market. Again, is it more of a greenwashing component, or is it actually real? And with a more modern REC process, you can say, no, we're actually paying this premium to ensure there's locality to it, so we can verify that it's incentivizing the production where we are. Right?
Yeah,
and making making our local
you're
grid better.
So right. So we were talking about this before. I love this story of how does a person, an individual, go along their learning of their awakening to sustainability and what we need to do as a society. You had yours earlier than most. Congratulations. As I'm in mine this year and I'm watching other people go through theirs, it's not instantaneous. It's not like hands together. I'd make a loud clap, but I don't want to mess this up.
Yeah.
But right, it's not like impactful. It's a little bit more gradual. It's like this buildup analogy we talked about, the boiling water. And then it's real. I think that the people that are going to invest in this, which we just talked about, and this is our marketplace, right? Corporate, publicly traded companies that want to make a difference. As they want to invest in these things, they want to make the process as easy as possible, because most of them are at the base camp of that mountain. Amazon's, Walmart's, what they're doing, they're up here. And by the way, I know that stuff. That's what I spent the last 16 years of my life doing. 24/7 matching carbon-free energy is a couple of different options. You got Level 10 with their PPA marketplace. These are all great things. More the merrier. We want to partner with everybody. If you have a need in what we can serve and how we do our process, which now, by the way, we've actually, in the last month and a half, we've solved for how to make the investment in AREX a $0 bottom line impact to the purchasing company if they have tax liability.
Okay.
And
so tell me what that means, because I don't really know how RECs get cut. And so maybe it's worthwhile, because ultimately what this means is Zettawatts it's a marketplace, it's a clearinghouse, right? We're nodding our head because I don't really know how these exist traditionally. So why don't you start there, and that'll get into the business model and why this is a significant innovation on your guys' part.
Cool. Yeah. So on the marketplace, there's different kinds of marketplaces. So by the way, different types and different kinds. So from a type perspective, you have ITC marketplaces, investment tax credit marketplaces. You have rec brokerage firms, right? You have all these PPA like Level 10 we talked about. Sorry, I don't get paid by them. Shouldn't be mentioning them that much. Zettawatts. But there's all these marketplaces, and they're all bilateral, right? You know what bilateral transaction is?
You have a buyer and a seller.
Correct. And it's right here. And then you get it's like buying a house, right? Agent gets a fee cut immediately. That's it.
Yeah. That's your compensation for creating that market. Yeah.
Correct. But then there's market makers. And that's
what you guys are.
And Scott was the one. So this is where his Priceline experience comes in real big handy as our founder. To create a lot of movement of buyers and sellers, and like really, how do I put this? The demand drives the process. And once the demand's in, if you aggregate all that demand and then show it and say to the suppliers, you don't have to do a deal with this person. I'm the buyer. Zettawatts is the buyer. So we have to be creditworthy, and you have to believe in our process and all that stuff, but sell us recs from new projects that you have coming on, 5 to 10 year strips. Right now we're interested in 2025 vintage. We have a couple interest demand in 2024, but we're trying to build something that is going to change this speed. The speed's not fast enough. We need to be faster. So if you aggregate that demand, and this is what we do, we show it to the suppliers. We're a buyer. We already have paper, right? They already know our process. They're good with it. By the way, the rec actually has to be owned and transferred once it's minted. It goes through different databases.
Yeah, it's that certification process, right? That creates the C in rec.
Correct. And these are the companies that are holding that glue of the process of a rec together that's been built over the last 15 years. That makes it say, oh yeah, this isn't double counted.
This is the original NFT right here. Is what this is. Yeah.
For renewable energy sources, it's renewable energy sources NFT. I like that. That's good.
Yeah. So anyway, that would be non-fungible. It's certified. There's a certification on the process. Like, you know what you're buying.
Correct. Right? And the way our marketplace works when you aggregate all that demand is that we're not telling the buyer that we are going to fill your demand. You're telling us what you're a buyer at. Now, once you tell us you're a buyer, you give us the right to 2-3 months right now, but eventually it'll be a liquid market, and it'll be real time, a day, a week, but an offer goes in. It's held for a certain amount of time. We're then showing it. As we get volume that's coming into Zettawatts, that's where our software comes in. Our software matching algorithm pairs it back up to the right mix. So then maybe we fulfill 40,000 of those 60,000 ARECs that you wanted to purchase. At that point, you'll know the projects that it's from. Now, here's the beautiful thing of a non-bilateral market. The buyer is not exposed to a single seller. The seller is not exposed to a single buyer. And what's beautiful about that is that, let's say a buyer who has this additionality claim, their purchase was so big, it was 1 million recs a year, which, by the way, there are companies that do 4 million that we're talking to. When they go and make that investment, they'll know which projects that it's being tied to at that time. But let's say one of those projects has a delay. They get pushed off. The queue says whatever. There's a million reasons why a project can get delayed. Now, there are some agreements between us and the seller, right? So there's some repercussions, but not many, because it's going to happen. But it's additionality. So we're going to know about that project real quick. We're going to know about that project not getting done beforehand. So now the demand just goes back into our marketplace and it can get refilled. So it's really when that additionality claim that they wanted hits, that's when now everything's cemented. And by the way, that's when the farm, well, I'm saying solar farm, but any renewable energy resource starts minting their RECs, right? One at a time. Every megawatt hour they produce, they get to mint one.
And that's a way to get, in many ways, instant diversification working through you guys. So if they had to go one-on-one to each other in a bilateral arrangement, there's that. They take on all the risk on both sides, right?
Right. Now you're exposed to the credit of the different deals. Like there's so many things that you get exposed to. And honestly, if the project I've spoken to so many people doing so many cool things in building new renewable energy and electricity generation sources recently. And what I hear is one of their common problems. It's not just the revenue source. It's really also getting the financing up front. And that's kind of where the IRA comes in and where the investment, transferable investment tax credits come in. And that shift is really going to cause a lot of these projects to happen. And so that's really what they need. They need that upfront capital to actually build. And then, like any business, then they actually start producing things, widgets, and then they get revenue streams off that widgets. And the entire financial model has to be sound enough for somebody to give them their master loan in the beginning. Right? Now, the IRA now has from 30 to 70% of that upfront cost. You can mint tax credits. Worth explaining more?
Yes, and it would be worthwhile to see how much of that overlaps with, like, because it's distinctly not a REC, right? But
distinctly not a REC.
But there's is there overlap in the process? I guess that's the question.
So no, there's no overlaps in the process. But
this is like it's almost a third commodity that can get sold now. Like before it was megawatts that they were selling, and then they had RECs on top of it. You could ostensibly sell the tax credit in that sense, right?
100% correct. Absolutely. That is part of their upfront financing vehicle. The tax credit, this 30 to 70% as part of the IRA, gets minted and transferred singularly one time. There's no reselling. You can't trade them. There's some really good rules around. Correct. That is one of the big differences between RECs and ITCs. Listen, if the government's going to give you that much of a tax credit, which is awesome, it's going to get so much more done. It has to be something where you don't want too many middle, and I'm talking as a market maker too, right? But in that process, I get why it's being done the way it is, because it's really saying that just literally takes dollar for dollar off of the buying company's tax bill for the year. But it gets minted on the day that you produce your first megawatt. So beforehand,
you want to resolve who the buyer is ahead of time. Yeah.
But what that does is remember, a project is not real until they start construction. So along that journey in the beginning, it's really just getting paper, right? Agreements in place with different counterparties that if this thing does happen on said day, this is how it's going to work thereafter. So leading up to it, the more people that can give something to a project, great. So it's an awesome new construct out of the IRA. By the way, companies have invested in projects forever. They in the beginning, pre-IRA, you had to be on their cap table. So you actually had to own a percentage of company. Think of a publicly traded company. That means that company, 123 Project LLC, has to roll up to it. If that project goes bankrupt, that's against your balance sheet. It's a different. That's different. Now, by the way, it's probably about 20 to 25% return on investment is what I've heard over 5 years in that structure, that a bank, and banks are very big investors in a lot of projects. But if you sit on the cap table, that's roughly what you're going to get over a 5-year period. In the what's being formed now, so post IRA, to be the buyer, to benefit from the tax credit
Mm-hmm.
that is minted, you don't actually have to be on the cap table.
Mm-hmm.
So when that minting happens, they are able to just transfer the credits at that time and reap the benefits of whatever
Yep.
deal they made. So let's say 90 to 92 cents. So it's actually 85 to 90 cents on the dollar. So company gives 10 million. Company gives 8.5 million
Mm-hmm.
to Project. Project minted $10 million in credits. They
Yep.
transfer them over. $10 million comes off of this company's bill.
And from the finance guys within the big companies playbook, they've made $1.5 million basically in savings doing that exercise. Is that the right way to think about it?
Absolutely.
So someone who's doing
less whatever the market maker is making, by the way.
So the spreadsheet math is it's instant value created for them. Right?
Exactly.
And that's why they want to go through this exercise.
So to get that master financing agreement, the loan to start your construction, you need to have all this paper of what's going to happen when you produce that first megawatt.
Yeah. I want to ask a question, but I want to clarify something on the IRA. So one of the things that's interesting is whereas a REC kind of needs to be matched up with consumption of energy, the tax credit really could go to a buyer in a completely different industry, right? Like it could be
anything.
If Kids R Us are still around, they could be buying tax credits, right? In energy projects.
Yes.
Right.
Yes. Although they're not producing a profit, so they're probably not paying taxes. So
the only thing is you need to be doing a profit that year.
Companies, right?
Yeah. And so this is a way for people who are not necessarily energy investors to still participate in the energy transition.
Right. Yeah. And so there's so many of those companies now that are starting to invest in projects in this way. And really all you need is tax liability for that, right? If you create tax liabilities in a given year, when that minting happens, you at the end of the year, just think about like how we do our own tax submission at the end of the year. You have this new paper. It's going to be like form 8124567B.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you put that with your taxes and you pay less taxes. And it's that simple. It's that simple of how now the IRA makes this process. And by the way, how this relates to what we're doing at Zettawatts, I can name, let me do some shout outs, right? Like Crux Climate, Basis Climate, Stentum. There's so many companies out. There's way more I'm not naming. And if I didn't name you, I'm sorry, but we're going to be doing business with everybody. That's our model at Zettawatts. We want everyone to be partners, however we can speed this up. But there's all these different tax marketplaces out there that are working with corporates. They're trying to get that tax liability, future tax liability commitments. And then they're going to projects and they're brokering deals. And again, the more of them, the better, because projects need to be done in Ohio. Projects are something that are more local. That's what I've seen. Projects are not, there's some big companies, EDPR and other companies out there that are really big. However, I think a lot of the big massive, so utility scale is wonderful, but a lot of the boom that's going to occur is in those like 50 megawatt projects and those 20. And any of the new starting ones, it's going to be 1, 2, 3 megawatt projects, just like solar was back in the day. When I saw that 3.5 gig project from SunVia, that's the biggest project I've ever seen, which is awesome. And those need to happen too. However, it's going to take every single megawatt of production. So
you want to enable
sizes.
that part of the market.
So right now, the stories that you're in the headlines and the news, they're going to be these big, massive investments from Amazon and Walmart. But again, they have 20-person teams. So they know this top of the mountain that exists.
Yeah.
And as we're starting this journey with folks, if I can make it as simple as, do you want to claim additionality? Most of the clients most of our alpha clients right now are folks that are buying RECs today. They don't like the greenwashing claim. They want to do something more impactful. So do you want additionality? Checkbox, yes. If you're not doing anything, go buy a REC. Start somewhere, or come to us. But if you want to claim what you want to claim, you're basically filling out a form to say, at this, I am a buyer, and this is how my budget looks and what I'm willing to pay. We have software for that to bring customers in, right? To help them through the ideation process. What is this going to cost me? Okay. Because it's going to cost you something. So as they're building those layers of, okay, in 2025, I'm going to do 10%. And then in 2026, I want to get to 20 and 30. So they're layering in hedges or blocks of RECs, right? Blocks of ARECs. As they're doing that process, comes out at the bottom and says, it's going to cost you $5 million. Some of our deals are like that size. Some of them are 400,000, whatever. Some of them are even bigger. But we haven't closed the deal yet, by the way. So eventually we're going to come back to financing and where we're at in our journey. It sounds really magical, but it's 10 months of practice before you actually get it back.
This is why this is hard work and someone needs to do it, which is you guys.
I mean, hey, if this is where we're at in this moment, we're going to put in our best effort and get it done. We're also a 17-person team. So a 17-person pro bono team that is rock stars. I haven't met a single person who works with Scott that's not awesome and just great human beings. So shout out to the Zettawatts team. You guys rock. They'll be the 17 of the hopefully millions of people that watch this, but let's be real for a second. I'm not that cool.
All the Jasons are cool.
All the Jasons are cool. By the way,
anyway, so I
one of your form questions was, how do you pronounce your name? Which, by the way, for a lot of people, I think it is amazing that you asked that. It's so how you identify. It's so important. You got to feel that name. But I think my response on the forum was something funny like, if you mispronounce my name, bro,
we're gonna have words.
We're gonna have problems.
I mean, the real challenge is, I think names are important, but also, and Jason as a name is like the most common English name for our generation.
I did pronounce your last name completely wrong when I first met you, and you're like, I'm used to it. But now I know it's ETA, and it sounds a lot better anyway.
But I think especially in a place like Houston where everyone's so international, you can't have a lot of presumptions about how people pronounce their name. So that's where that question comes from.
So true, dude. So true.
And I'll tell you, most people who come on the show, I will have to do the name take like 3 or 4 times because I want to get it right.
So good though. That's I mean, that's what makes you a genuine person, man, and just heart for sure. We bring it back though. I know because the thought just came back into my head. Remember, I brought you through that whole thing, and I said, now it's $5 million. Well, now we just figured out a way to say, okay, it's $5 million, or let's use a better example. It's an $800,000 purchase, or it's $20 million in tax liability. And because I'm working with my market ITC partners to do that deal, we're not doing that deal, like you said, separate market, separate paper, separate process. And somebody needs to really know it and get it right. Because again, the corporate needs to trust in the company that's going to do any vendor. They got to trust. They're going to pass a lot of tests.
Yep.
I know these big
a lot
corporates.
Of qualification.
Holy goodness, are the security assessments, the data assessments. You're going to pass tests with corporates, right? But once the trust is there, then that company is going to do that transaction for them. So what we're doing is basically saying, hey, corporate, you want to do this? Or, hey, sustainability leader, go to your CFO. See if you have $20 million of tax liability, because then I'm going to make it. So you're going to give me $20 million on a date when the COD happens of N number of projects, right? Because we're one to many or many to one, doesn't matter in our system. And you're going to get $20 million in tax credits back. It's free. In a sense.
In a sense,
In a sense, right? In your total accounting for your company, which, by the way, eventually Scott is going to come on a podcast, maybe even this one, and he's going to lay out his vision for how to change the SEC rules to actually allow corporate America to truly show to people and let the stock price affect these in a way that I think everyone can get around, which is really just making your sustainability spending visual and bringing it above the line.
It's telling that story.
So I'll let him get into that a little bit more in a later podcast. But when he told me, I was just like, mind blown. I'm signed up. Whatever, dude. Wherever this journey takes us. If I have to eat ramen, I'll eat ramen, dude. Did it in college, do it again.
So I think
I have a family and kids right now. So
you gotta,
if they listen to this, no, Dad's not eating ramen. But we'll be fine no matter what.
But I think the key here is, or one of the keys is, this is a complicated process. And you talk a lot about putting paper to work. And you're really creating the option, the future option that you're going to execute. I assume the first Recs were so expensive to create because of all the lawyers that had to get involved.
So true.
Right? But you, in many ways, because you're this market maker, you can standardize the processes. And I assume the transaction costs are a lot cheaper than they used to be. Like what you gave the example of, I think it was like an $800,000 transaction. Like what would it cost to paper that up in the before times versus the way you guys are doing it?
Yeah, that's a good question. So, I honestly, because I didn't spend much time, I was wholesale and retail for my first 15 years in energy. So it's like a different, trading power versus RECs. RECs are typically, RECs right now trade at $2 to $2.50 a REC, a megawatt hour. We're trying to show that additionality is actually worth like $6. So when I paper transactions, they might pay $6.50 or $7. We make money too. For-profit company, not a certified B Corp or anything like that. We're a market maker, and now probably going to reinvest.
You're bringing value.
Probably going to reinvest that money in a lot of cool, things, and more speed and everything. But that transaction process with how RECs work, there are a lot in the last 15 years, so many software companies, soft tech, energy tech, right, clean tech software companies created REC retirement processes, like super crisp.
This is where you measure
very
that
detailed.
You consumed it, essentially.
Correct.
Yeah.
Now, some companies are non-for-profit, some companies are for-profit. There's a whole bunch of different ones. Some are state level, some, right? There are many different ones. Now, again, wherever the buyer actually wants it from, that's where they're going to get it from.
Yep.
There's also some cool companies that are kind of clearinghouses of clearinghouses, meaning like I API connect into 20 different clearinghouses, and I'm like a master clearer. I'm going to clear it in all of the marketplaces at once and give you one single point of contact. And Zettawatts is like, thank you so much for doing your job. Thank you for your API connection. Now I can make my process.
You build on top.
Oh my! So everyone should build on top. Oh my God!
Yeah.
And they get paid a service fee, right? They get paid a subscription fee for that. And hell yeah, like yes, we will pay that subscription fee. Hopefully they'll work with us and see what we're building and say over time we're both going to make more money together. But that's where partnerships come in. And I think if you're open to partnerships and you just don't, turn people away and you open the door, sometimes magical things happen, man. And you just try to find value for each other. And and that's when you said building on top, that's kind of what led me to that next piece, which everyone should build on top. Yeah. Everyone should utilize the things that everyone else is doing for this climate change. And listen, profiteers, we talked about this we know what the tax companies are making too, because we're trading this information and we're showing each other and being like, does this seem fair? Does this seem fair? Yeah, this seems fair, but like not in like a closed door room, like
it's a market rate for a service, right? I mean,
it is. No question.
You're bringing value. So no, definitely, it's going to be for-profit companies, venture capital, private equity that makes all this happen. So I think the capitalist mindset is what makes it happen fast, right?
It does. It's like you close your eyes and you go to a place where you want to be good and want to be genuine. And then you open your eyes and look in the real world, and the real world still exists and money is still a thing. And yes, the way that this is going to happen is through the companies who have the most power today. Thank you, Amazon and Walmart and all these companies that are doing this and setting the tone. These huge projects, this is setting the change. It's lighting the fire in, hopefully, all of us that start seeing this over time and how it plays out.
No, that's fantastic. I keep looking at the time and I'm like, oh, we've already been talking for 45 minutes and we haven't gotten to the other meat of the program here. I do want to hear a little bit about the team. You said there's 17 of you. I want to hear about how the team teamed together. You didn't really go into the full backstory of your co-founder.
No, thanks, man.
So let's go back there.
Yeah, appreciate that. So what started this whole climate journey thing is, and by the way, I don't just work for Zettawatts. Jason does a few different things for a few different companies. I was part of a founding team 5 years ago in a company that was a SaaS startup called Enerx in the retail energy market. Really strong, good footprint now, and I feel comfortable that I can split my time. But I was passionate. I said, I want to do something in climate, and all you need to do is put it out there. Started talking to my friends about this. One of my friends, Zach Axelrod, says, hey, you really need to meet Scott Case. I said, well, Scott Case. He was the founding CTO of Priceline back in the day, but he's done some really cool stuff since, like world-changing stuff. Have him on the show next. He'll tell it better than I do. It's his life story. But again, that moment was so big for me because I said, my ego said, hey, this is awesome. Somebody, thinks that I can help them get into this. Really, he's helping me get into it.
Mm.
As I started to go through this process of seeing what was in Houston, this is when I met you too. And I'm like, oh man, this is such a cool ecosystem. And then it just became what I always do, which if you open network and you just talk to people and see what value you can create from them, your network starts building massively in this. And so it's really just what happened. And I, now it's 40 hours of meetings a week and talking to some wonderful people and doing some wonderful things. But it's also really, it's just starting a movement too. This is what everybody's doing. Everyone's part of a movement, and then individuals are starting their own movement too. And so Scott's journey on this was, I did all this cool stuff. He's a founder of founders. He even ran a podcast himself for a while in the pandemic about founders. As he was on his journey and he read that book and he saw that change, it was like, how do I make the most impact? And that comes back to that 16 and a half terawatt hours of the 65 problem. It is the biggest problem to solve. And then it was a process of, he was working on this for a year before I met him. And then this last 10 months has just been somebody who knows a little bit about energy with somebody who knows a hell of a lot about making things happen, speed and quick and fast. And now we're getting to the place where we're getting close to actual paperwork and deals. We have, lawyers writing and drafting, and we have companies that are saying, yeah, let me review. And we have suppliers that are saying, yeah, let me review. So that's the stage we're at. And then we've been on this VC route too, right? And that's a whole nother topic that we can get into if you want to. Trying to think of any other things about, the team. Well, and then that's just Scott, right? We have a nuclear engineer. His name's Jairus Green. Guy's awesome. Dave, I'm going to leave out people, which is, I don't want to do this, but Dave, Emily, Tony, Caroline, there's so many people. Kate, there's marketing people, there's customer success people, there's Kevin Case. His son actually works on the project, which is really cool too. He's a software engineer and he just got out of college, and the dude's brilliant. And then there's some people that are even at the fray helping us too, in just saying like, hey, there's one guy in DC that's helping us work on making sure that the New York and the Boston rules that came out, that the other people that are going to actually make rules in the future kind of realize what I've just told you on this podcast. That you should allow this to be part of one of the things that qualify. Yep. So is every carbon credit that we talked about too, trying to do that same thing. But those rules, by the way, are coming out and saying, no, you can't do the wreck the old way. Yep. And you should go this really, really jump to the top at mountain way. And we're just like, no, let's just
find the right amount.
Let's march up together and we'll all get, if we all do it, we will all get there by 2050. I'm very confident in that statement. I see that happening. This movement is strong and it's growing and it's fast. And more people are getting into it because they're realizing, okay, some people, everyone knows that the oil and gas and everything like that is going to be around for the next 30 plus years. But some people are making that jump today. And some people are going to make that jump in 10 years from now and 20 years from now and 30 years from now. And so that's going to be cool to watch and just see all of these things happen over the course of time.
So, no, thank you for that. Why Houston? Why do you love the city so much?
So I moved here as part of my journey within retail energy as I was bouncing, different opportunities, learning different parts of the marketplace.
Was this 5 or so years back?
So this is actually 2017. Yeah, so 7 years ago. Yeah. Actually, before that, I'm lying. So 2017 is when I started NRX. 2015 is when I moved here.
Okay.
So 2015, I moved here, and it was for a retail energy company out of Sugarland. So we bought a house close to Sugarland. I love it out there in the West Burbs. And this is what's so cool about Houston. Why Houston? Because I think I moved here 3 weeks. So now you can see how bad I am with remembering dates. But it was like 3 weeks before Harvey, and then Harvey hit. And then I saw this city come together and I'm like, I'm never leaving.
You're never leaving.
No, this city is awesome. It's a melting pot of every single person and nobody really cares about it. And that is my type of style and vibe. It's like, I can see past all of the stuff. If I close my eyes and listen to you, none of that stuff exists. So I really believe that this is a city where people come together and it's really cool to see. So I knew I wasn't leaving at that point. The company I moved down here for didn't work out. We'll
As
leave
it
it at
happens.
that, as it happens. And then that's when I started doing this NRX project, which was great and was my first founding experience. I am not a founder, though, at this point in my career, and who knows what the future path will be. But at this point, I really enjoy helping somebody make their vision come to life. That's what I'm good at. I can make another vision come to life, which is also why I try to split my time now, because I want to do that for as many people as I can too. But yes, it has been a really fun process of being in Houston, learning about the city, and just diving in deep and trying to pull more people along to these conferences, right?
Yeah.
It's like a mixing of industries that's happening
Here in Houston. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And you have some companies that are going to be the biggest parts of this transition, and they're going through their own transition, and they're like, great, let's support innovation. And that's what's cool to be around ION and right, and Greentown Labs and just all this whole vibe. Energy Underground.
Yep.
We can go Clean Techs. We can go all of them.
Yeah.
All the events we attend.
I mean, so you've seen a lot of the change in the ecosystem. And so tell me about what's different that you really appreciate in the ecosystem that just wasn't here when you first moved.
Yeah, I don't know what, because I didn't exist in that ecosystem until the last year of the real ecosystem. I was in the retail energy ecosystem, which by the way is pretty large down here. You get NRG, Constellation has really big offices down here. All the TXU, there's all major players are in Texas. We're the energy capital of the world.
Yep.
But they're just such a niche industry. And by the way, all these niche industries, they just didn't mix before. They were fit. I always say this about retail energy. Retail energy in general, 2000 roughly is when this idea came to like demonopolize the utility, because that's how innovation happens. I'm a firm believer in this world of making money. The less regulation on that type of free markets. That's how that happens.
And it's a niche that is unique to Texas, but that niche didn't necessarily interact with the innovation ecosystem that we're part of today.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And so, as these different groups now start to mix around Houston and the US and honestly internationally, I would tell you that regulation-wise, the European Union and everybody kind of in that block is way more advanced than we are. And they're talking about scope 4 and scope 5 now, which I haven't even gotten into it because I'm trying to solve a US problem. US is actually one of the biggest, polluters, if you want to call them. So is China and all, but they're big countries. So is India, right? All the big countries, of course they are, right? But yeah, it's really cool seeing all these different groups now start to mix together in all these different cities, and especially Houston, because it's a melting pot and because most people are cool with getting to know somebody down here, right? Most of us are transplants from somewhere else in Houston. So it makes it really easy to go and say, hey, what's your background? Where are you from? Let's talk. Let's have a conversation about life. And then what do you do? And then going on to maybe, changing the world together type of thing. So,
well, I mean, I think your story is pretty typical in the sense that I don't think there was much of an innovation ecosystem here to discover.
Really?
It really exploded.
When did you come down?
I've been coming down to Houston since 2012. So
wow. Okay.
I did the Surge Accelerator way back in the day, which was the marquee kind of acceleration program that was here. And that was a great experience, and it really introduced me to kind of Houston mindset, but in some ways the ecosystem took a while to take hold, and so there were a few players downtown, but with the Cannon coming online around that I think it was 2017 timeline.
Okay.
And with changes around Station Houston and then the ION, like it's been an evolution.
It's like any movement that you create, and then you can see these start.
It gets that hockey stick effect where it took a while to really pick up steam.
I mean, it takes so much work and effort up front, and honestly, in that phase, as an entrepreneur, you just don't know. You don't know. And you got to put in effort every day. And every single time you're told, this is a journey that you went through, right? So have I. Anytime you found anything from scratch, I mean, it's just all this, will it happen? Won't it happen? Believe it's going to happen. Go for it. And look, now you've seen all these things happen and you were part of that spark in the beginning. It's a cool story, man. But it's how perseverance happens. You got to get through those type of roadblocks that happen. One of the other reasons why I'm so attracted to Zettawatts is, one of your questions was, have you hit a roadblock? And I was no.
Yeah.
VC raise, but honestly, it's simply just because of the fact people are interested in our Series A and have told us flat out, oh, we want to write you a check size of 15 million when you need 15 million. But because you want 3 million now, it's like too small.
Thesis.
Correct.
Yeah.
It doesn't. And by the way, good. Have a thesis. I
Yeah.
hope there's more companies that are formed, these VC companies that are investing in these type of different projects. But that's kind of where it's at right now. It's like, I'm willing to spend small amounts of money on something really new and innovative if it's hardware. But if it's software, I want to be once you produce a bunch of revenue. Here's the thing. Zettawatts isn't raising because of the money. Remember back, I said 17 people working pro bono on this project and really good people. We're going to be successful regardless. The money itself is immaterial. The investment allows us to pay some of these people so they're working more full time, by the way.
Yeah. It's an accelerant. I mean, that's what you need it for.
But really what it's for, man, it's for the credibility.
Because you need to underwrite essentially as a market maker.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Now, honestly, the companies that are on our sell side are some of these very, very large, big time suppliers of energy projects and resources. And they're basically writing paper with us and saying, no, I like what you do. I don't need your balance sheet. I got a big enough one, so don't worry about it. But yeah, eventually there has to be that trust the corporates build too, because we're new. We haven't we are where we are. We are a 0 to 1 startup. So, but then you just, like you said, you just need to get that one to say yes. And I know we're incredibly close to all of that. And then all those things start to happen. But I do believe that 3 million, it's really about the credibility that brings. It's like you said, underwriting. That's a whole nother story.
Okay, sorry.
Like, no, it's okay.
Not knowing what it means.
No, it's okay. But like when you talk about that, it's like insurance for the process.
Yeah.
Remember, we're talking about a transaction that's going to incur in the future. What happens if a transaction falls? Is there going to be a company that for a price that's willing to step in the middle and saying, I'll take that risk on? All of those things are going to happen because these are all deals, right, that are being made. So when you said underwriting, there is some more complexity. Yep. However, in a way, you're right. You're underwriting the credibility of the process. Again, some of these really large companies, some of which I've named on this and some of which I haven't, right? Yeah. You know, by the way, a big one is the built environment. Real estate investment trusts are actually the farthest one along on this journey because they know.
Because the buildings are so energy intensive. Yep.
So energy intensive. Yep. Now, you can reduce scope 1 all you want. You're drawing power from the grid for that building. You got lights. You got HVAC systems. You got refrigerators and freezers in some of them. Ice making machines. Those are a big one too. Ice arenas. Those are the biggest. So cold, right? You got to keep it so chilled all the time. But those companies that are energy intensive have been a little bit further along this journey. And so they're a big part of this transition too. But those companies, they need to have that trust is what we were talking about, right? They need to have that trust. And so when a very large VC that has done a lot of really cool investments and have companies that have already actually gotten to B, C, D acquired by somebody, now you're part of that group. It's that instant credibility that you need. So anyway, it'll happen when it's supposed to happen. I enjoy the pitches. I'm learning a lot just watching Scott pitch and you know how he goes through this process. And it's awesome, man. It's been really cool to be a part of.
Good. Why don't we wrap this up a little bit? So what are hidden gems in Houston that our listeners need to hear about?
Hidden gems in Houston. See, we talked about this beforehand, but now we're going to get into a food kick. We start going on that
it is lunchtime.
That's all I can think about in Houston is how good the food is right now. I mean, we did a couple shout outs, during, and just like, I really enjoy the vibe that the events. So a couple organizations is Real with Kay McCall.
Yeah.
If you're not
Renewable
involved
Energy
in
Alliance.
Real, Renewable Energy Alliance League or Alliance. So is that it? I don't know what the L if there was. Right? I'm gonna ask Kay. You gotta tell me. Send me a DM.
We'll have to get Kay on here at some point.
You should. Kay's awesome, man. She's just so. She's in it. She's in it for making people come together, and that's a beautiful thing, right? So a lot of what Greentown Labs was founded on too, right? So, but these events that are mixing, and that was my first energy event, was a seated dinner that Renewable Energy Alliance League had in November of last year, and it was people from BP and every other company that would exist, and it was just cool. It was like cool to be in a room of 250 people, that we're looking to change something.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's where. So a couple of shout outs there, but hidden gem wise, in the energy transition, that's what I got. And then yeah, food wise, you want to go for another hour?
We can go for a food wise. You get to pick your one. What's the one restaurant people have to check out in Houston?
Oh, that's so
especially
tough.
if they're out of town.
Can you answer this question? Actually, you answer this question. You've been here longer, and you know good food spots.
There's this restaurant I love.
You give me one.
It's called Street to Kitchen.
Okay.
They just moved out of their location in Edo, but they have the best Thai food in Houston, and you cannot walk up. Like, you have to get a reservation because it used to be a small, I don't know, it was like 18 or 20 seats.
Ooh.
But like, you can tell the woman who runs the show, like, she loves food, and like but anyways, that's my hidden gem for a restaurant.
I appreciate it, man. I'm gonna go there now. That is awesome. Yeah, you're better at that. It's funny, the restaurants are just nothing coming. So
all right, no worries. What are some of the gaps that you still see in the system, in the ecosystem today?
I think there has to be more companies that are a little bit more nimble in their solution making. I think as you go through the process of like, I have a good solution and this is the solution and you have to do this solution, you start to get people that are like, well, that doesn't feel like the right solution. So the solution has to be a little bit more meldable. I see a lot of companies having their vision and like just laser sticking to it. By the way, it is a good entrepreneurial tactic to stay laser focused, right? New ideas will come in all the time. If you're just blinders on though, then that's not what you're doing.
So this is on the startup side. Like, sometimes you're not listening to the market enough.
Correct. And then this is how startups fail. Yeah. And honestly, I just told you, Zettawatts, I'm confident we're going to succeed. We need everyone to succeed to make this problem happen. So a lot of this is just like, let's help other people that have a good idea, but they're missing a piece, right? So when we have these Scott and I have conversations with other companies that they're founding their own process too. A lot of these companies are just being created. We're trying to work on these things together, like lessons learned, right? Some of us are 2-time founders. Scott's like an 80-time founder. And then some of these people, it's their first time founding a company. And so that's kind of, I think, where the miss is in the ecosystem. There's a lot of companies that are helping these founders. And then, but with some advice that like, well, sometimes when you hear a good idea, change it. The ITC thing was a huge change for us. If we put our blinders on and been like, no, that's a different marketplace, we're not going to do that, we would have missed the way to now unlock this at hopefully roughly $0 impact to the customer.
And ultimately, that's about solving your mission and your original problem, and the mechanism can evolve if you kind of stick true to your mission.
Yes, and our mission simply is the more renewable projects online, the better.
Yeah,
faster, quicker, better. And how many renewable energy projects can we get online?
Yeah,
through the way that we're seeing this market unfold. And like I said, there's other ones. We need them all.
Yeah, but I think what you're honing in on is a unique cultural challenge in Houston. I don't know if it's the Texan in us or the Houstonian in us, but sometimes they really like to just work on their problem, and so sometimes it's challenging to collaborate.
Yeah,
and it's a weakness of our ecosystem, not for any one individual person, but if you look at like the East Coast, West Coast ecosystems, people are very responsive to who gets funded, where's the market going, and then they just put the business away if it just doesn't work after 18 months. And they know they're in the innovation ecosystem, and I'm guilty of this. Like, people in Houston sometimes will stick to a program and a concept for a decade because you do love the problem a lot. And sometimes there's something to be said for that culture of saying, no, we're going to break things. We're going to discover if there's real market validation. It's not, let's move on.
Absolutely. Fail fast. Fail fast is one of the greatest things that you get to learn as a founder is if you by the way, you will fail. There will be stumbling blocks. I'm telling you, we're getting no's or series, call us when we have your next check.
Yeah. But you got to take that as a learning.
Correct.
And that's a challenge almost, where something about the Houston entrepreneurial culture kind of gets in the way of learning quickly. And that's something that's going to change as we get better at growing and scaling up businesses. And this is why it's great that we're bringing in entrepreneurs from out of state.
Yeah.
And kind of injecting that DNA, because we need that velocity.
So true. Right? I'm sure a lot of the listeners, some of them probably went to RE Plus. And RE Plus is here, which I did not go to. I had a conflict, but I will go. I'm going to try to go next year, because who doesn't like Vegas? I play poker as my my vice. So that's why I'm in Vegas, not for any other reasons, but I do love Vegas. And it was 40,000 people.
Yeah.
40,000 people.
Yeah.
And I just heard from other people that I've gotten to network with, like you, who've been going, maybe for a lot of years. And some people were like, yeah, dude, it was a room of like 20 of us. I'm like, that was just 10 years ago. That's 40,000 people are interested in this topic. And that's cool. And it's probably going to, well, honestly, most of the people that went this year was like, they need to break this up. They need to have a little bit more specificity. And this is kind of the balance that you always go to. Some people are working on problems of this size. Some people are working on problems of this size. It needs every single one in the middle too. And it's, even these conferences, that's bringing people together in a sense too. But you got to bring them together for the right purposes. And then you got to make the deals and the things, the actual transactions that are going to move this. Yep. You have to make those happen. So it's not just about bringing people together. Yep. It's also about bringing people together that are the right fit, the right time, so that they can make something and move forward. Don't get stuck up in the process of making deals for too long and who's getting what and am I getting it up? Make the deal, go, move on. And that has to be a little bit more, I think, we're saying the same thing, is that has to be more of the mentality, right? Open networking. Hey, you're in construction of projects. Great. I need the buyer. Can't help. Move on. Really nice. Can I help you in any way? Is there any way that I can be of service to you? Any of my network friends?
Yep.
What do you need? And you move on. Yep. But then you find them, and that's how you fail fast too. So
yeah, no, there's definitely an element. As we wrap, is there anything the audience can do to support your goals?
Ooh. If you're a VC that's listening and want to hear a pitch from the two people that I've mentioned a lot on this call, me and Scott and I, Scott is going to pitch and I am going to learn is what's going to happen. But I usually get to be on these calls, which is really nice. Yeah, that's really it. I mean, I think it's that once we have that person on board, there are other things, and the first deal might happen and then the VC comes in. Doesn't matter. But you're still going to need that infusion of outside capital that wants to be part of the cause. Because the biggest thing that I've heard on all the panels that we've been to that VCs really bring to you, and they do and they're right, their network. Yeah. All the other investments that they've made. Because you want to talk about people that are very interested in people getting to do together and to do just make them make money from the situation. They're investors in all these companies. They make money off of those companies doing better. Yeah. So then they put them together, and that's where. And there's different methods of that. Greentown is an example of that too, but totally different, where you're renting a space and you're paying rent. Yeah. But they still have a lot of those same bring people together, community, which is beautiful. And so they're all creating communities, but some are very much for profit. That's why I think that's a really important. How could we be helped? Great. Let's be a part of that network. We're already doing deals on our own. We're a part of a bigger network. I could imagine a lot more people saying the same thing that 98 out of my 100 conversations are, which is, this is a really good idea. And this is really going to help us get what we need. Thank you. Yeah. And yeah, man, I hope I'm back here again in a year and it's more good news. But yeah, man.
So, and how can people find you?
Yeah. So LinkedIn is the best way. So Zettawatts.com, that's our website. It's Zettawatts. And that's, by the way, how many watts we're probably going to need at some point in our life as we electrify anything. So cool name from Scott. And then LinkedIn, if you're trying to find me, I'm a pretty open networker. I enjoy trying to help people the best I can, which sometimes is great and sometimes is awful, and you should throw it out and move on. But yeah, man, LinkedIn is the best way for sure. And I enjoy networking with people. So let's get a conversation going.
Good. Well, thanks for being here.
Cheers, man. Thanks, Jason. I really appreciate you having me, man. This has been awesome.